Give me a minute. They say a good name is better than great riches. But does that really apply to the world today? You better believe it. You screw up and show yourself to be a non-integrous person in business today, the world finds out on social media in about 7 minutes. But really, it's about more than being fearful of being exposed on social media. It's about the actual satisfaction you get when you put your head on the pillow at night because you're doing the right thing all the time. C.S. Lewis said, "Integrity is what you do when no one is watching." We live in a world where everyone is watching all the time. So let's make sure we get clear on our values. Roy Disney would say, when your values are clear, your decisions are easy. So when the stakes are high, that's when your character gets to shine the most. Join me today, and I'll show you why a good name is more desirable than great riches. Top of the morning, I'm Brian Buffini. Everyone says integrity matters in business, right up until it becomes inconvenient. Then it gets real. Living out your values isn't about slogans or mission statements. It's about making the tough calls, keeping your word and doing the right thing, even when it costs you time, money, or a quick win. The funny thing is, the businesses that play the long game with integrity, they don't just sleep better at night. They build stronger relationships, better reputations, and results that actually last. In today's Blueprint, I'll share a personal story where I witnessed an act of integrity that changed my life forever. As I try to share with you a blueprint for success, I've also received a blueprint, especially from my father and grandfather. Now, if you've ever heard me present anywhere at all in the world, I always tell the story of how I went to work in the family business as an 8-year-old kid. Painters and decorators, Priory Road, the south side of Dublin. That's where every one of the Buffinis went to learn the trade. You went to my grandfather's house, and he taught you the most basic fundamental things: how to hold a brush, how to hold the sandpaper so you didn't lose your fingerprints, how to sweep a floor, down to the most basic things, all the way up to eventually, a number of years later, you got a chance to go on the job. My dad and my grandfather had quite a few painters working for him at one stage. My grandfather would bring you in and you were his protege. He was like the Mr. Miyagi of the Buffini family. And every time you did your work, he'd come and look in the afternoon, maybe at lunchtime, maybe at the end of the day. He'd look at your work, inspect it, and then he'd ask you this question: can you put your name to that? Can you put your name to that? And if you couldn't put your name to the work you'd done, you had to do it over, without the customer ever requesting it. Because my father and grandfather and their father and father before him, for 5 generations, Buffini and Company Decorating was all about what can you put your name to. Our standard was higher than our customers, so that our customers would be so delighted with what we did, they'd tell their friends and family members. When we finished up a paint job, we'd clean the windows and change the light bulbs to show off the paint job. And that's how business was done for 5 generations. Those are all cool things, and there's many people have grown up with a father or mother who exhibited those kind of characteristics. But I got one extra special gift. And it was when I was about 14, my father, who had done business with a handshake his whole life, was working for an American design firm out in New York. They'd opened up an office in Dublin, and because my dad's business was well known, they reached out to him. And we got a job to take a castle in a place called Castle Bellingham and turn it into a hotel. So the contractors were there, and they had done all their major modifications, and then we came in. And this was an extraordinary job. Now this is 45 years ago. We were using silk wallpaper. We were using gold leaf on the cornices. It was a remarkable job. Well, my dad typically, when he started a job, he took about 10 to 15% of the cash up front for materials. And then about 70% of the way into the job, he'd take an advance, but he would front all the rest of the materials and pay for all the labor. And we had a lot of fellas working on this job. And it was quite a ways from our house. So I always remember in my dad's car, there was a brown station wagon, and we drive up to Castle Bellingham about an hour away. And then we go to work all day and come home that night. During the course of this job, it gets to be about 70% done. It is looking fantastic. A castle turned into a hotel. And the work was immaculate. So my dad contacts the design firm looking for his money. The day he contacts them, he finds out they have received full payment from the client. They filed bankruptcy in Ireland, closed up and moved back to America. And it's only because of my high nature I'm not mentioning their name right now on this broadcast. The job is 70% done. It's been 100% paid for. And the people who got the money have skedaddled. And I never forget it. I mean, I remember my dad being somewhat forlorn about the whole thing. I remember him talking to my mom and telling her what the implications were. We had about 15 to 20 guys working on this job for about 5 months. He had fronted all the money. And so here it came. What are we going to do? Well, I never forget. The next morning, I'm bawling my eyes out as a kid. I'm facing the ruination of our family. And my dad comes and wakes me up. He says, "What's wrong with you?" And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're late. Get up. We got to go to work." Because this was the summertime and I worked all summer. Well, we got dressed up, got to work. I thought we were going to another job to try to make the bills pay. And the next thing you know, we're heading on the road up to Castle Bellingham. And I sat there talking to my dad. And by this stage at 14, I was already doing kind of the books. And I said, "What are we doing?" He said, "We're going to finish the job." But I said, "Dad, we've got another month and a half of this. We have no money. You got to pay all the men, and we're not getting paid for the job." He said, "Son, did your grandfather not tell you the whole part about can you put your name to this?" We finished the job. It actually led to a transformation of my father's business. After that, about a year later, he went from having maybe a dozen guys working for him to having 2. Things got very, very tight in our home life. I remember selling some things off to make ends meet. Recently, my dad is 94 now. He's in a care home in Dublin. And I went home to see him. And we were having a chat and we were talking about old times and whatever else. And I said to him, "Dad, you know, I admired you very much and I admired you for your business." And I brought up the Castle Bellingham story. And he said, "Well, that's the least I could do, son. The customer deserved the very best we could do. My business arrangement with the decorator," he said, "I learned from that and I never did that again." But he said, "I'm 94 and when I go to sleep at night, I know I always took care of my clients." So that's the imagery that I had growing up as a 14-year-old. That's allowed me to build a business that's done $1 billion in sales over the last 30 years. That's allowed me to know that when I put my head at the pillow at night, that I can sleep well. So here's the dynamic. The blueprint is this. Can you put your name to the work you've done? Who exactly, what standard, whose standard are you playing for? Because when you do the right thing in the right way, I believe the right rewards will come. You know, that's funny. I got to retire my dad at 64 years of age because I took the principles that he taught me and I built it into a fortune. My dad got to live a great life. Him and Mom got to travel the world. They had a beach house here in San Diego overlooking the ocean. He lived as if he was a multi-millionaire the last 30 years of his life, and yet he never made that money. He made that impression. So that blueprint that he gave me is how I've run my business today. And you know what? You do reap what you sow. So here's the blueprint. Get clear on your values. Not mine, not your boss's, not my dad's. What are your values? Next, do the right thing, even when it costs you. And lastly, integrity. It gives you peace of mind. Peace that comes from knowing you did the right thing, even if it cost you. Even if nobody noticed, even if it was hard. There's something powerful about laying your head on that pillow at night, knowing you told the truth, kept your word, and honored your values. And that kind of peace of mind, that in itself is the great reward.
All right, Dad, I'm so excited for today's edition of Ask Mr. B because Castle Bellingham, I've never heard that story. I thought I heard all your stories, but it was so powerful. I've always known about the can you put your name to it that Grandpa instilled in our family. But can you share a time where you lived this out?
Yeah. Well, you know, sometimes, especially as much as we tell all the stories and, you know, Mom's heard them all about 400 times. There's certain stories you don't tell because they're painful, right? And so that kind of led to the demise of my father's painting business. A, it wasn't something I ever talked about. B, he never mentioned it. In fact, it was only at lunchtime today did I Google the company that was the design firm. And sure enough, because we just never talked about it. We didn't have an axe to grind or whatever, although I did as a kid. I know their name. I know their name today. And I Googled them at lunchtime today. And sure enough, they ended up filing bankruptcy in America 5 years later too, which is You don't always see it, right? You know, the guy cries out in the Bible, why do the wicked prosper? Look, it became second nature. Like the truth of the matter is, like, if I'm at a grocery store and someone gives me change for a 20 and I gave them a 10, it never even occurs to me, right? Not that I'm beyond any of that stuff. I just grew up in the footsteps of a mother and father, especially my father when it came to business, and just integrity was everything to him. So I'll tell you how it played out in my life. Twice in my life, I've had shareholders in a business venture. And I've often talked about I've had 47 businesses and one lost money. Well, that one that lost money, I had 18 shareholders, and they all invested money. They're all buddies and friends, including my attorney. And this business went belly up. And it was just, it was kind of a wild deal. You know all about the Misty Mate story and whatever else. And so my own attorney came to me and said, you should file bankruptcy on that business, which also meant all the creditors would lose their money, all the investors, including himself. But he said, this is what you need to do. And the thing is, it never even occurred to me for a second. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, if you don't, it's going to take you years to pay off. Talking to your mother, it was a very short conversation. Well, of course we're going to do that. And so I just think it's great to be in that spot. And by the way, we paid off all the investors, and they all got an 18% return. Because that's what I felt was reasonable over that time frame. Took a few years to do it, by the way. It was not an easy deal. So that's where the phrase, takes 6 hours to put a bad deal together and 6 years to take care of it. That's where that came from. And I've just found it to be very constant. So, but here's where stuff pays off, right? So the company that was the design firm files bankruptcy because they did business in a crappy way. Their word wasn't their bond. They take that back to America, and the same thing happens. Well, here's now the principles of my father, which, you know, when I was telling the story yesterday, it didn't even dawn on me until I was telling the story. Like, my father's retirement was funded by his son who applied his principles, right? So what would have been what he was working for anyway happened for him. The second thing is, it's that business that went belly up. All those investors got paid, and they all got paid 18%. So years later, when I built another business that required shareholders, I'm able to look every one of those people in the eye and said, everyone who ever invested with me made money. And it was true. And a couple of the people who'd been involved with me with the business that failed were begging me to let them back into the next thing. So the truth of the matter is, the good name is better than great riches. It is about sleeping on the pillow. But it also, you know, the law of the harvest is a big deal. And sometimes it's a very long game. In my dad's case, it was decades before he saw the benefit of his integrity show up in his own retirement for him and Mom. So yeah, so there's an example. And again, I hadn't thought about this stuff in 30 years. So you heard something else today you didn't know.
It's so cool.
That's it.
I mean, and I've gotten to see you live it out up close, you know, like how you can truly put your name to everything. And like, your heart is truly to help people. And I believe that's why you have the biggest real estate coaching company in the world, because like, you truly are just here to serve people. And so, like, back to business, when it comes to integrity, do you think that's something you inherit, you learn, you develop through experience?
Well, I'd say obviously there's people who are more predisposed to it than others. There's people who have a moral or a spiritual code, which adds great value as well. And then it can be developed. I mean, if you think about it, you were in the horse world. And what shocked me about the horse world is, for all the millionaires and billionaires involved, the most unethical business I've ever been around in my life. Right? Yeah. Shocking. And it hurt us in many occasions to do the right thing when surrounded by people who would, you know, literally lie, and, you know, because there's millions of dollars at stake, and they'd look you in the eye and say, yeah. I mean, I remember watching you one time almost get killed by a horse by someone who was kind of a friend, and because he was trying to make $1 million sale. And turns out, yeah, that horse tries to kill people all the time. Or the horse has this major injury and they cover it up and this and that and the other. So, you know, for me, sometimes it's not a fit, and you have to do the right thing for the right reasons. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to put your head on the pillow. You know, for me, it's a higher stake because it's an audience of one. So I'll say this. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is about prayer. And it says, when you pray, go into your closet, close the door, and pray in secret. And your Father who hears in secret will reward you. Well, if that's what happens with prayer, then I think that's also happens with our actions, our activities. And in today's world, it's like, nobody's going to know. You know, no one's going to know. No one's going to see it. But there's one person who always sees it and rewards it. Yeah. And so that's where my faith tradition comes in. And I know you've done the same thing. I've watched you for years work a lot harder than most people had to because we weren't willing to cut corners, weren't willing to sell somebody a horse that we had that had its imperfections or whatever. And but we can, we have peace about everything we did at this time.
Yeah. What encouragement do you have for someone right now who is struggling, trying to just feed their kids, and they could cut a corner without anyone knowing? Like, what encouragement would you have for them in this time?
Again, I don't want to be preaching to people, but I got to give people where it comes from, right? What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? The thing about it is that every time you cut that corner, you cut a little piece of your soul off. And it starts out small, but it never stays small. And then it becomes bigger. And so we all make mistakes. We all mess up. We all do that. But when it starts to become a habit, and then that habit starts to grow, the next thing you know, it becomes a condition. And then it becomes, our consciences become seared. And I had a business deal in here the other day where somebody's struggling. And this is an organization I spent millions and millions and millions of dollars with. And they brought me in to do an event, and they've been struggling and struggling. And in their mind, what they were doing, which was a direct undermining of my relationship with them, they're so caught up with their own need, they don't even see it. And they brought me in to do this event, and it was embarrassing how bad it was. But I walked away and was like, great. I mean, we're no longer doing business. That millions of dollars just walked out for that company. And he's trying to make a few bucks on the side, but, directly undermining me, my company, our relationship, and my good name. I was like, so what happens is you end up getting so used to doing it that you kind of lose concept of, you kind of get spatial disorientation. It's like flying a plane without knowing how to read the instruments. After a while, you can't tell if you're going up or down. Again, it's difficult. Ethics, morals, spiritual codes, compass, how you were raised, all those things. And it's just, in the world we live in today, it's moving so fast and it goes along that it looks like the folks who are doing the wrong things are being rewarded the most. And I just don't believe it. And I live a different way. And here's the thing, I'm very content with where I'm at. And I get to, every night I put my head in my pillow, I'll tell you this, I have no concept of anyone ever that I've done wrong to in business.
Yeah.
And so what's that worth?
It's amazing. Okay, let's finish up with, let's go back to stories.
Okay.
Now,
more happy times.
Yeah. Castle Bellingham, I've never heard of, but I have heard of Little Business Brian. So I want you to share a story about Little Business Brian that maybe our audience hasn't heard before, because they're pretty awesome.
Okay.
Like kid business.
Great.
Brian.
And you know what's good about that? Because it wasn't all perfect, Mr. High Moral Ethics back then either. So, yeah, it's a good one. So where you heard about this was at my mom's funeral. So my kids are all sitting in the front row, and my sister does my mom's eulogy, which was fantastic. And she said, and she's going through each one of the kids, and she gets to me and she goes, and there's Brian, who at 14 had 2 businesses in high school and was making more money than our dad. And all of my kids are like, what's she talking about? I'm like, you don't need to know. So when I was 14, my dad said to me, hey, kid, you're the one I don't have to worry about. So I decided from that point on, I was going to be financially independent. I was never going to ask my mom and dad for money. I was also doing the books. In fact, I didn't even realize it till yesterday. I was doing the accounting for my dad. And when I saw the Castle Bellingham thing, I said, I'll never take another dollar from him again as a result of that Castle Bellingham thing.
Wow.
So you've heard 2 parts of that, but you never heard and it didn't even dawn on me till yesterday I was telling the story. So what did I do? Well, let's see. I figured out there was a import-export guy on the docks of Dublin who was bringing in like athletic equipment. So there wasn't like Dick's Sporting Goods and whatever else rolling around the place. And so this guy basically showed up. I went to see where he was. He had a warehouse full of soccer boots and jerseys and shirts and this and that and the other. And I went and resold them to the school. Okay. And so now, candidly, I don't know where that stuff came from. Okay. Just so you know, I never quite asked him that. I never even thought of asking him that. So Mr. Castle Bellingham here, I'm not sure the stuff was fenced or not. But like all the way through high school, I was the supplier for all the athletic equipment for Outlands College in Stillorgan. And there's probably someone in Dublin right now going to go and do an audit of the school books. But But I did that. I paid my way through school doing that. I also got into the ticket business. So back then, Ireland, we go to concerts every week. The term scalper wasn't really invented back then, but I would take the money from the boots and the jerseys business and whatever else, and I would go down and I would sleep outside Lansdowne Road where the big concerts were. And I would sleep outside. I'd get there about 3 a.m. when it was cold and wet, no one would be there, right? So opportunity cost, pitch a little tent. And I would buy tickets, and I would buy tons of tickets. There was it went on for about a year and a half until they changed the rules. But I would buy like 50 tickets to an Elton John concert, or Simon and Garfunkel, or Bruce Springsteen, or a U2 concert. And then I'd resell them at a nice profit. But they didn't have to wait at 3 o'clock in the morning to get the tickets.
That's
the
true.
concert was sold out. So I didn't know I was a scalper until years later when I heard that phrase. There was no ticket master. So I just, I think, you could say, okay, is that in contrast to the previous stuff? Not really. I mean, I wasn't stealing that or whatever else. But yeah, I was doing that when I was 14, and I paid my way through high school. I paid my way through college. I paid my own fees to get, it's very expensive to get your green card. I paid for my brother's green cards and this and that and the other. So all done on the backs of a little hustling entrepreneur on the south side of Dublin.
I love it.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Top of the morning to you. Welcome to Coach 'Em Up. You're on the Brian Buffini Show. Tell everybody who you are, where you're from.
Hi, Brian. My name is Joy Chena. I'm from Guelph, Ontario, Canada.
Glad to have you today, bud.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been in a coaching program for just about 13 years now.
Wow. Yeah.
Great.
Who's your coach, Joy?
Tom Crowley's my coach. Yes.
Oh, the Crilly Meister. Brilliant guy. Yes, sir. So what's the one question I can help you with today?
The one question I have, Brian, is really if you had to go back and start over with your whole business again, personally and professionally, with everything you know today, what would you tweak, improve, or do differently?
I would tell you the one thing and it's probably is a great advice for life as much as it is for business. I would spend less time worrying and more time trusting. That's it. Like you're in a market right now that has a lot of negatives, right? There's a lot of things going against the Ontario market. There's a lot of noise. There's some economic issues. There's all those kinds of things. I will just say this. In my business life, I developed this working by referral system that was based on some very, very old principles. And I worked it and I trusted it. And I used to teach this all the time. I'd say, trust the system and work the system. And in good markets or bad markets, it doesn't matter because what you're developing right now by doing these activities is developing trust with people. So that's a big thing. And I'd say the same thing for my life. I have 35-year marriage to the woman I love. I've got 6 great kids, 5 grandkids. And if I'd have known how good it would all have turned out, I wouldn't have spent so much time worrying about it. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
So I really think on a mental level, I trust more. And what I think that does reduces your anxiety and makes the journey a little bit more enjoyable. And I'm certainly trying to do that today, trying to be more present today. Here's my question to you. Why do you ask that question? What brings you to the place that's on your mind?
Because the system served me well. Yeah, we've had a tough time in this market right now, but we've done, based on your principles and what we put into place, it is arguably a recession-proof business. Like we've had a good year last year. We're off to a great start this year. I guess the reason for my question is, in hindsight, looking back myself, and your answer makes a ton of sense, is sort of being more present now. It's like, not that I missed it during that period, but we were busy building a business. Yeah. So I wasn't always
and
present.
Enjoy it more, because we're so busy striving and grinding and trying to provide for our family and take care of our customers. And you look at it, I mean, if you think about it, the Ontario market kind of has the perfect storm against it right now, right? And some of it's been years in the making. And yet, it's, what's interesting? You'll find this fascinating. I've probably had more interaction with my Canadian clients in the last 6 months than the last 5 years. And it's interesting. It's been fascinating, especially because the market's gotten tougher, but people seem to be leaning into their coach, leaning into the programs, making themselves available to events and things that we got going on like this, the Coach 'Em Up, or the 2-on-1 coaching sessions we do with our coaching members. And I think it's been fascinating to see. In fact, half of the people I've talked to today have been north of the border. So I think you've done a great job. You've built a great business. And I'd say just continue to trust. There's a lot of negativity around. The noise is heavy. The news is heavy. There's a lot of your peers are struggling and you're not. And the shoe's not going to drop because you've done those fundamentals. And so I would just say as best you can, enjoy this journey. You've earned it. You busted your hump. You've done a great job. And you got to keep doing it. You got to keep doing it. But doing it in such a way that you enjoy it a bit more, I think is the way to go.
Right. No, I appreciate that feedback. Thank you so much.
Well, congrats on all your success. Keep going, because here's the other part. They say that about a third of the Toronto Board of Realtors are going to leave in the next 18 months. And the people who, like you, stuck with it, the marketplace sees it, your customers see it, and this is the guy I trust. Because trust is developed far more in tough times than it is in happy times, in every personal relationship. So you're deepening your relationships with your customers right now. And when the things get a little better and rates change a little bit and so on and so forth, you'll be the one to catch it all. So good for you. Keep it going. Congrats on all your success. You're on the Coach 'em Up section of the Brian Buffini Show. Andy, why don't you tell everybody who you are and where you're from?
Thanks, Brian. Andy Scott, Dallas, Texas. I'm in leadership coaching
Awesome.
And I've been a member for maybe 13, 14 years.
That's awesome. If there's one thing I could help you with today, Andy, what would it be?
The finances circle.
Okay. Yep.
I know I feel a little vulnerable asking this question, but I've been struggling this year. I've swung more losses than I've ever swung in my career. I've had only one win so far this year out of 9 attempts, and it's all weird things. It's surprise foreclosures. It's buyers not showing up to the closing, like no showing, like the weirdest things.
Wow.
I had a good reserves that's about gone now. My wife is out of a job for 4 months. I'm busy. But it's not turning into to closings. Like the income's not coming in.
And you've had a good career, and you've done a good production in the past.
Yeah. I've been in the business for 21 years. I've been in the real estate business.
You're just in one of those seasons. And it's funny. My dad used to do, we'd be on the paint job as kids, and you'd show up at the job some mornings. And I never forget, my dad would have this philosophy, like someone spills a can of paint on the carpet, a ladder falls and goes through a window, whatever else. And you might have 2 or 3 of these things. And if there was 3, he'd say, that's it. Down tools, we're going home. Okay. And, sometimes there's just seasons in life like this. And sometimes it's spiritually, it can be a season of trial. And sometimes it's like, what's going on here? And what can shake us, especially as men, we often find our identity in being a provider. Your wife's out of work. And so all of a sudden, here's this confluence of really weird things that's happened. And it's also been a little bit of a strange season in real estate. There's been a lot of weird stuff in real estate lately. And you've been in a market that's been super hot and cooking for a long time. So here's my greatest encouragement to you. And I'll share this with you. I had a gentleman, I jumped on a call in the office here about a month and a half ago. And this gentleman said, Brian, I've been with you for years. I've been doing really well. Everything's just dried up. And he goes, I had a year's worth of reserves. I'm down to a month. And what had happened is he was watching that ticker go down every month. And I'm sure you can relate to this. He'd been at a certain level of production. He'd had a certain level of performance. A number of strange things happened to him. But he was preoccupied with what he had and what he was about to lose. So here's my best coaching advice for Andy Scott. And I really appreciate you coming on here today, because my favorite thing in life is to try to help somebody. You've been with me a long time.
It's an honor getting to talk to you.
So let me say this, bud. The only thing that you can do right now is to focus on what's in front of you, okay? I would encourage you to not focus on what you don't have. The greatest example, it's a Texas example, is Lee Trevino. Lee Trevino was a Mexican golfer in Texas in the 60s, okay? And in the late 50s, he was a caddy master in San Antonio Country Club. There were no Mexicans on tour anywhere in golf. There's very few today. So now picture almost 50 some years ago. So he goes on to win the US Open in 1967. He He's got pants that are up looking like they have a flood. He's got red socks, a red sweater. Doesn't look like he belongs. And he makes this really tricky putt to win the U.S. Open. And the reporter said to him, was that the most pressure you were ever under? He says, oh, not close. He said, when I was a caddy master at San Antonio Country Club, I'm playing in a $2 bet, $2 Nassau, and I'm one down on the 17th, and I don't have $2. And if I lose that game, not only do I lose that bet, but because I can't pay up, I'm going to be kicked out, and I'm going to be ruined. And so the reporter, in a great moment of insight, asked him, well, how did you do it? And Lee says, I played like I had the money in my pocket. I played like I had the money in my pocket. I won that day. He says, I came down 18th today, and I played like I'd already won the U.S. Open. Now, when he won the U.S. Open, he changed his life forever. He became one of the greatest golfers of all time. He said, I've made so much money, my two ex-wives' husbands never have to work again. That's how well he did. So my encouragement to you is play like you have the money in your pocket. You've had a bad run here. Sometimes life is teaching you stuff, and you got to be open to what you're being taught. And that's a bigger conversation for a bigger day. But here's what I want you to do. You know, we built this Blitz program for people to put head and rear down and just to do the activities every day. I want you to focus on your morning routine for yourself personally and your daily routine in regards to lead generation. The one thing that you can control is the volume and quality of leads that you bring in. And if you bring in a high volume of high quality leads, a number of those are going to turn into transactions, and those transactions will close. So what I need you to focus on right now, because what is your plan B? Like, what else am I going to do? You're going to keep bailing until you're by yourself trying to figure this out. So right now it's take care of your morning routine, your health routine, your mental game, your spiritual game, whatever it is that sets you up for the morning. That's number one goal, because you need to be at your best right now because you're under attack. Mm-hmm. Number two, what's your daily routine? You need to do an hour and a half of lead generation 5 days a week. Whatever's on that Blitz book for the day, you do it. Just no matter what. If a tree falls down in your car, I'm getting a bicycle. I don't care what comes. I don't care what's happening. I don't care what's going on, the outside noise, because those problems are those problems. And you're going to play like you have the money in your pocket. And you're going to be the Andy Scott you've been for the past 15 years, getting it done as an absolute pro. And there's still plenty of business to be done in Dallas, Texas. There's still plenty of Californians moving there. I know that.
Yeah, sure.
And there's still plenty of referrals inside our network. And so you're here today, and there's 50,000 people going to watch this program today. And if any of them have a referral for you in Dallas-Fort Worth area, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to Andy Scott. And we're going to send him referrals. We're going to get him cooking. I want you to focus on your very best as a person. And I want you to focus on the routines we've laid out for you. I promise you, if you've believed anything I've said to you in the last 15 years, believe me now. And you will come through this, and you will have a story to tell, my friend. And that story is going to encourage other people who are struggling in the future.
That sounds good. I'm ready for it.
That's it. Well, I'm glad you're here today. Control what you can control, bud. It's going to work out. I promise you. I've been at this a long time. I'm 40 years in this game. And if you'll just do that, you'll win. Yeah.
The one thing that I know that I'm not giving up is the coaching. And I've done some weird things to stick with it because I do believe in this, and I need it more than ever.
You need it more than ever. You're a wise man. And that kind of commitment it just inspires me. Who's your coach, Andy?
Jim Rooney.
Jim Rooney, the great Jim Rooney.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Rooney's going to get a call from me, and we're going to throw a little extra love your way, my friend, for all your loyalty towards us. And here's what I'm going to tell you. We're going to help you get through this, and you're going to come out the other side as a winner.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, bud. Thanks for calling today. Thanks for being so open.